As people are joining us, I just want to say thank you for being part of the first ever Independent Venue Week panel series, IVW Talks. The session titled Hosting Sponsored Shows Without Selling Out is about to start. With over 140 participating venues in 80 cities across 33 states, this edition of Independent Venue Week is the biggest one yet. It is also more urgent and relevant than ever as we face the potential loss of up to 90% of independent venues in the US. That is Independent Venue Week as another first, hosting an auction benefiting the NEVA Emergency Relief Fund to help those in the most need. We at Marauder, the producers behind the American edition of Independent Venue Week, would like to take this opportunity to thank every single venue, artist, and donor helping to make this year's event happen. A special thank you to our partners Eventbrite, Big Room, Ascend Insurance Brokerage, and School of Rock. I urge you to check out independentvenueweek.com for this week's full program and an overview of the auction items. Now, I welcome you to Hosting Sponsored Shows Without Selling Out and hand it over to Dan Gross of McCann.
Thank you, Moose. Thank you, Independent Venue Week, for having us. I'm Dan. I am a music producer at McCann, New York. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today. We are here to talk about how sponsorship can have a meaningful role in independent venues, whether that's streaming or in person in this new 2020 environment. I would like to introduce some of our folks by letting them introduce themselves. I think I will start by passing the mic over to Jen Sullivan. Jennifer, will you take it away?
Sure, thanks, Dan. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Sullivan. I'm president of Membrane. We're an LA-based company specializing in marketing innovation, and a lot of our clients are large Fortune 500 companies. We also work with a number of startups, and we've worked with music artists as well. About 6 years ago, I started a music magazine called The Storm Report, which focuses on trends in the music industry, up-and-coming artists. And so we do a lot of work in connecting brands to talent and figuring out mutually beneficial partnerships. And so we're really excited to be a part of this panel.
Awesome. Next, Rob. Hey, buddy.
Cool. Hey, everybody.
Introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, sure. My name is Rob Mason. I am the director of multimedia productions for an experiential agency in Cincinnati, Ohio called Agar. I also handle talent booking for them, for many companies, large and small, private events, public events. I also book a venue in Cincinnati called Ghost Baby, which is a small jazz club. And I also run a record label called Old Flame Records. That's been a hobby side hustle of mine for a long time. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rob. Lizzie, over to you. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lizzie Newton. I've been at South by Southwest for over a decade now, always focused on music booking and different roles over the years, from booking the UK and Irish bands that have come over to working on some of our blogger showcases, booking the Radio Day stage, working with different presenters like on house activations, things like the Hype Hotel and the House of Vans and different things. In my role currently, I work with our brand partners that come in and have activations featuring live music.
Awesome. Thanks, Lizzie. So Jen, Rob, and Lizzie are coming at us from all over the country. They come from different backgrounds, all dealing with sponsorship in different ways, and being big parts of the music industry too. So one quick thing I want to just shout out to everybody who's participating, who's attending this panel. Please feel free to pop a message or a question into the chat at any point. This is meant to be a bit of a back and forth, a little different from what a typical panel might be, just because we're already online and it's a two-way conversation. So we're gonna start with a couple of questions that we've prepared and things that we wanna talk about, but many of you are on the front lines and experiencing the realities of 2020 directly right now and might have other things to ask us or input to share, and we absolutely wanna hear that. So first off, the title of our panel is about selling out, and sure, you can sell out, But what does selling out mean? And how does sponsors and bands and venues all play together in that? Quick, turn it over to you, Jennifer. What do you think about can brands sell out right now?
I think that sellout is probably an outdated term. I think that sellout, was kind of a derogatory term in the industry where, an artist was doing something for the paycheck and it was pretty obvious. And I think that's still very possible. I think it's the same with brands, getting involved in events, but not really knowing how to be part of the culture. And so I think that can also have a negative connotation. But anymore, I think that there's a transparency that exists in marketing where, artists are, sharing their daily lives on social media. Brands are also trying to relate to their audiences, their customers in a similar way by showing their personality. And so I think as long as there's that authenticity and transparency that is occurring, it's almost like, there's audiences, I think, especially now, are cheering on these opportunities where artists are being paid for, getting involved and doing what they love, and, maybe even helping brands to relate more to their audiences and their fans. So I think it's probably, I hate to use the now more than ever phrase, but now more than ever, I think that brands, have an opportunity to tap into talent in a meaningful way without the talent feeling like, it's out of touch with who they are. I think it really gives artists a platform and the financing to do what they love when they can't go into, traditional venues. And I do think that venues also have an opportunity. So I won't continue going. I want to save it for later, but I do think that, because we have so many independent venues in this conversation, that venues can also start to think of themselves as intellectual property, as viable equities that, have brand partnership opportunities, as in the same way that artists do. And Lizzie, I think you also mentioned, like selling out wasn't something that you felt was happening as much as, especially with South by.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been really even a conversation for the past couple of years. I do also think, as you were mentioning, that brands have gotten a lot smarter about how they do work within the music space. A lot of my initial conversations with brands, one of the first questions that I ask them is, why do you want to incorporate music into this activation or this program or this product launch, whatever it is? Sometimes I will say the brands still don't exactly know why they want to incorporate music. They just feel like they should be. And so I would say, anybody working on brand partnerships or, anything of that nature within the music space, just making sure that you identify what that reason is. Is it just to provide entertainment for people, or is it, like you were saying, to connect with the band's audience, or is it to convey like energy of some sort? There could be a number of different reasons. Is it for long-term, like bigger partnerships? I think starting there is always, starting at the beginning is always important.
Beginning is a very good place to start. Totally.
Yeah.
So Jen, you brought up a great comment about venues treating themselves as intellectual property. I know that you do a lot of work in licensing beyond just music or music integration. So we should get back to that in a second. Rob, did you have anything else that you wanted to add about selling out, or okay, never mind? I see a head shake and a no. Cool. Well, I think that's all great stuff right there, guys, to kick off here. And maybe you've already set up that segue, Jen. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you might advise an independent venue to think of themselves as intellectual property, and maybe the tasteful and or non-sellout way to do that in communities today?
Yeah, I think, most of the venues we're talking about have a legacy, have an audience, have people that are, kind of coming back time and time again. I know, for me, living in Los Angeles, going to the Troubadour and the Roxy and the Whiskey A Go Go and the Echo, I mean, those are all venues that for me are discovery places. And, working with brands, I rely a lot on the venues to curate talent, especially independent artists that aren't, yet maybe signed to a label or yet established on social media and less discoverable. And so I think that that trust that consumers have, audiences have with venues is something that venues can be using in order to establish themselves beyond just the live events and just the, the in-person experience. And you see it with Austin City Limits and the Grand Ole Opry and these iconic venues that have over the years established themselves as properties that can exist in other formats on TV, on online. And so I think that there's probably opportunities there. I think streaming concerts, that are curated by independent venues, where the venue is participating along with the artists. I think that's going to be something that we see coming up, especially as we are, there's so many of these festivals that are happening online that are more charity oriented. But we were, discussing yesterday, just as a sidebar, that, a lot of these smaller artists, they rely on the money in order to pay their bills. And so for them to do a charity concert, that's more challenging. And maybe that's the role of brands to come in and work with the venues to make sure that everybody's being paid and everybody is being supported. But I do think that you'll see venues, just like festivals, you see Woodstock t-shirts, Coachella t-shirts, lots of other products. I think from a merchandise licensing perspective, there's probably opportunities for venues, and also from a media perspective, I think that you'll see venues maybe looking to exist beyond just the on-site.
And there's been some great partnerships too, like on that merchandising front. I know Vans, was putting out limited edition shoes for certain venues with the funds going to those venues. Like here in Austin, they had a Mohawk shoe. And I'll say too, like we've seen, some of our local venues and promoters really tap in to those companies that are based here in Austin, like Yeti, some CBD companies, things like that. So really just utilizing those people in the community that are also wanting to do things and connect with an audience and happy to get involved and get back in front of people.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we talk about the brand, the independent venue acting as a brand because we want to increase the visibility to brands. So that's a mouthful. I think when we talk to brands, we want them to understand who they're partnering with. And the independent venue has an identity that we want to really put forth in that conversation to make sure that we're aligning the right audiences and making the right decisions for the brand. Rob, do you have any examples of stuff happening in Cincinnati that you want to share, or partnerships that you've worked on in past festivals?
I mean, basically where I'm at right now, I have a large client that we were planning on doing a bunch of activations at a bunch of festivals throughout the country. And then COVID hit, and then we've had to pause all of that, obviously, and then pivot. And, for them, this particular brand, we've pivoted to more virtual events where we've been producing, live stream content from, various places around the country, just to kind of have a place filler, because obviously they still need to do their marketing and, they've got a budget that they need to go through and whatnot. So that's been challenging in a lot of ways but it's also been, awesome in a lot of ways because it's opening up to a whole nother, group of people that wouldn't have been at a particular festival in Atlanta can tune in from anywhere in the country. So, in a lot of ways, there are some positives out of it, but, there's nothing that can replace a live concert,
Yeah, I think we're all missing live concerts right now. So we're right there with you guys. And we want to be supportive here and we want to participate too. So you touched a little bit on live streaming and the brand having a role in the live stream. I know that some cities are seeing concerts coming back. Maybe it's a drive-in, maybe it's an outdoor show, maybe it's limited capacity, or maybe it's a surprise. I know the New York Philharmonic in New York has been doing unannounced shows where they just surprise people at an outdoor space and just start playing. Some of that I thought was pretty interesting. And there was a brand role there. There was some stuff that we can talk about in a little bit. I would love to hear either from you, Lizzie, or from you, Rob, about what's happening in Austin and in Cincinnati. I think that there were some examples of activations outdoors that you guys were liking.
Yeah, so one that, you know, is happening in Austin right now, there's a drive-in theater where there are ticketed shows happening. There's nonprofit or partners in the music space that are involved in each show. So like some of them, the proceeds might go to the Health Alliance for Austin musicians. There's other nonprofits that support like up and coming artists and stuff like that, kind of like an incubator. But they're partnering with brands doing like VIP ticket packages. So, you know, again, Yeti was one of those. They were offering Yeti coolers to these higher ticket price holders. They were also offering product. So like a product basket of like Red Bull and there's a chip company that they're partnering with. So, you know, and then those sponsors, I think there's a designated area where they can bring people in that work for their company and have seating out there and get their people together. I know on the corporate side, like that's something that companies are looking for right now. They want to find ways to get their employees together or keep people happy but safe at the same time. So I think also, you know, maybe thinking about what can you offer the brand? Is it like free passes to a virtual stream, you know, for people at the company? That's something great that they can offer their employees.
Yeah, and here in Cincinnati, I mean, we're doing a variety of things. You know, it's legal to be back in a venue at a reduced capacity right now. So, you know, it's a little bit weird to be able to see live music in Cincinnati, but not, you know, other places around the country. But, you know, there are the same with drive-in, parking lot shows, that kind of stuff too. So, you know, but it's all still, it doesn't feel the same currently.
And it's going to change, I think, with the, you know, weather changing too. You know, a lot of the outdoor things that we're seeing are probably going to be more challenged. So maybe more live streaming and more of the reduced capacity types of shows, I think.
Yeah. I'll say too, you know, I just worked actually on the Save Our Stages festival that streamed on YouTube. I guess it was this past weekend. I'm kind of losing track of time like everybody else at this point. But, you know, one of the challenges, the bigger challenges around that, I would say, was just figuring out, I mean, for our case, we only wanted to have artists that were in the same city, in the same place, actually playing together, not kind of like editing it together. So it was hard to find bands that were actually quarantining in the same city. You know, and we also had a lot of proclivities around what the safety precautions were, even if, you know, there was ensurement that we were following the local protocols. For a lot of artists, they were worried about the ventilation in the venues, or were people being tested, who was actually allowed in the venue on the staff, you know, were they going to be bringing friends in? So I would say, you know, even for the live streaming, it's the Wild West, you know, figuring it out in COVID times, but having that kind of safety plan top of mind, and not necessarily just following the local guidelines, but being prepared for those questions that will come in, because they will come in. You know, some people have parents staying with them, and whatever it is that's causing them to be extra cautious, and just making sure that, you know, you're respectful of that as you're asking people to do things, because a lot of people do want to do things, and they're happy to come into a space and do a live stream. And a lot of people, even that have those proclivities, we found did come in once we really outlined exactly what it was the plan was. So I don't know if you're finding that, Rob, with the shows that you have now. I mean, I know they're like limited capacity, which is good, makes it easier. But I don't know if you've seen any of those sensitivities come up.
Oh, absolutely. I would say my local artist Rolodex is I'm probably operating at like 40% of what I normally would. You know, there's so many people that just aren't willing to play. There's so many bands that haven't played together since March.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they'll get together, a couple of them, and play acoustic on a porch or something. But yeah, it's been really challenging to get a lot of different quality acts in currently. So
I mean, that's a good note too. One of the things that we found is, you know, finding a rehearsal space and having the money to rent one was an issue. So if you're a venue that's not, you know, operating 7 days a week right now, just getting bands the opportunity to get into the space and rehearse, they're more likely to do something if you can offer that up. It's something that they're looking for, and a lot of them don't have a way to fund it themselves.
That's a great point, Lizzie. And I think you guys are hitting on something that we sometimes talk about in brand sponsorship for events specifically, which is how can the brand solve a pain point for the consumer? And the consumer in this case may or may not be the concert goer who might be thirsty and needs some free water or a water bottle or a refreshment or free food. Now we're talking about supporting our communities, and then from there, leveraging that into a sponsorship deal, saying, we need equipment for these people to rehearse, we need supplies for when they're in the room. And so that's actually a pretty great point. I actually want to turn this conversation a little bit, as we got a question in our Q&A. Thanks, Jeff. Are there any database resources for sponsorship contacts at brands that you'd suggest? So I think first and foremost, I kind of want to chime in here and say, thinking about what sponsors make sense in the space we're in today, there may or may not be opportunities to taste beer or chips unless you have a physical space. So with that in mind, anybody want to jump in here and talk about how to source sponsorship contacts?
I would say equipment partnerships are great. I mean, in terms of a database, I think, you know, you're asking if there's a specific database. I mean, I don't personally belong to any database, but, you know, I have, you know, people approaching us all the time about sponsorship opportunities with the brands that we work with. But, and there are some, I think, Sponsor Pitch. There's a few others out there that you can search, and they're easy. But I think it's more important to make the list. This is kind of the advice I would give, is make the list of, you know, brands and categories of products that you're seeking as a primary hit list. And then you can do an easy search to find out who the partnership agency, promotions agency, advertising agency that they work with, and or the key brand contacts. You can also, another hack would be to search PR for people that have, you know, been quoted in articles as, you know, the sponsorship person for that brand. And then it's pretty easy to get their contact information. But more important than that, I think it's having the package, knowing what you want from the relationship. So it's not just, hey, I'm looking for a sponsorship. You know, it has to be something very specific. You know, we want to perform on this date. We want to have this kind of an event, or we need this kind of equipment in order to, you know, be successful. And I think that that would be the winning formula for that. That was a lot.
That was great. Wow. Yeah, go ahead, Lizzie.
I just put something in the chat too. There's actually another, there's a database called Winmo, WINMO, that has some good brand information on it. It's not an open database. I think you have to pay like a subscription. I'm not sure how much it is, but I mean, depending, it could be worth it.
Yeah, I wouldn't send out a blanket email. I wouldn't send out, you know, kind of cold call types of emails. I would make it personalized for sure.
Yeah, doing your research on your target is always a good thing, right? But I think at the same time, I want to talk a little bit more about categories. Are there any categories that you have worked with in past festivals that you think might be a better fit or not right now? And how do you think packaging that sort of correspondence would make sense? Does it need to be like, here's my next 3 months or 6 months of programming, or here's what I'm doing next week, and can you help me by next week? Give us a little bit of point of view on that.
I mean, we're definitely looking at partnerships we work with Logitech, who owns quite a few technology brands, Blue Microphones, Ultimate Ears, the in-ear monitors for artists on stage, as well as, earphones for consumers. So big push around that. And I think that, you know, we're always looking for creative ideas for bringing those brands to life with the talent community, with the entertainment community. And I think music venues has a role to play in that. I think that, you know, looking at where we can be helpful in promoting the livelihoods of people that depend on, you know, these venues to stay open. I think that that's a very important cause for that brand, and for all of the brands that Logitech works with. So I definitely welcome venues to reach out. You know, we're definitely looking for opportunities to come up with some creative ideas to help. I will say the energy drink that we're working with also, but again, you know, it's hard to sample products when you're not live. And I'm sure that that's something with all of these that, you know, although I still think that there's opportunities to offer like cross promotional codes and things like that, like live streams, you know, can be connected really easily to merchandise and to selling and, you know, to also generating some revenue. So I think we're going to see more creative ways of that happening. You might not be able to have your beer in hand with the logo, but maybe there's a way to do it. I don't know.
I actually have a client that we've had that issue. You know, they're a food client, so our challenge has been getting product in people's mouths. So we've had to pivot, and we've done kind of what you said with like a website. You know, people fill in their address, and then the brand just ships them the food. So, and then people post it, and then they share, and then more people request. So it's just been cycling through, and it's been going really well. So, you know, there are opportunities, just have to be creative and figure out who you're really targeting.
I will say the other thing, you just sparked another thought, is that, you know, when we do brand sponsorships, we're always thinking about the people that aren't on site. So, you know, to be successful with an investment in a sponsorship for like a South by Southwest, you don't want it to just be the people attending South by Southwest. You want it to be social, you want it to be Instagrammable, you want people posting about it, you want people sharing it. So I think the more that you can think about ways that brands can benefit from using your logo on their packaging, or, you know, being able to talk about, like, you know, having special access, maybe a VIP experience, something like that. I think it causes, you know, any of these things are challenging, but they also cause creative solutions. They you know, make us think about creative solutions. And I think innovation right now is a good thing, and maybe the positive side of, you know, having to deal with this challenge.
Not being in the room with you guys, I'm never sure when you're done. I gotta make sure I pick up that pacing.
I give you like the genie head bob. Yeah,
I like the head bob. Thanks for hanging in there while we're virtual, everyone. So we got another question here. Hi, Vishruti, I hope I said your name correctly. Did you find any unusual brands now being more open to sponsoring live events? So I think this goes back to what we were just talking about a bit, and maybe Jen, you already talked about it. But maybe I'll ask you this, Lizzie. Are there brands that you thought were unusual that were maybe sponsoring South by Southwest or festivals like SOS Fest that were participating just this past weekend that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'm like,
I know.
in South by 2020.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there always are brands that come to the table for South by Southwest that, you know, sometimes initially there's a thought of like, why does it make sense? I'll say that, you know, with South by Southwest, most of the brands that come into the space, especially that deal with live music, they either have a product launch that is very timely coming out Q1, Q2, right around the festival. And they either like incorporate the product, if it's a physical, tangible thing, into the activation, getting it into people's hands, kind of what Jen was alluding to. Then it grows outside of that. People are posting on social, it's just appearing in photos, whatever it is. Or there can be like really cool activation integrations, a lot of times very expensive, that get like a media blitz out of it and everybody's writing about it. You know, some of the other times that brands come in when it's not a product launch, you know, it's either that entertainment factor, it's more like a corporate event kind of a vibe, and they really just want to get like face to face and have that B2B interaction with people at the event. Or I'll say they have a year-round music initiative. So they have some sort of ongoing program that they're doing multiple events, and South by just happens to be one of them. So, you know, if you're a venue out there just looking at companies that have those year-round initiatives, like maybe it's a one-off like virtual stream or live event, and it's more of a social campaign that they've been running up until now, helping them figure out a way to transform it in some way. Or, you know, if they've been doing a virtual stream at another venue, why not yours? So I'll say that some of those year-round programs, they do have a lifespan. So it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. But you can't really bank on that coming through, you know, over and over again.
Yeah, that's a challenge to plan for. And then knowing that brands are getting involved with certain things and finding local folks in your communities that maybe are helping already to speak the language of music or using the music world as part of their communications. Those are great allies for us. We have another question. As a venue, there's always internal discussion and concern about bringing in sponsors for shows, because if we do, the artist's agent is going to want a cut of the sponsorship because we're making money off the artist, essentially. Thanks, Jeff. I guess, how would you go about carving sponsorship away from the artists, or do they deserve part of that pie? Rob, I see you shaking your head, maybe.
I mean, I see it from both sides, you know. Obviously, you know, if a band is being exploited by a brand, so to speak, you know, they deserve a cut of it. But I also think that there's a lot of opportunities for brands to support their venues in their, you know, whether it's like a local Cincinnati brand supporting the Cincinnati venues, you know, kind of like the same way you would see, you know, marketing at a baseball stadium. You know, how many ads are all around a baseball stadium? I'm not saying to like totally deck yourself out in brands, but like, I mean, I feel like it's your own entity. You're allowed to do what you want in terms of marketing deals for your own entities.
I mean, I think you have to get creative with it too, right? Like the more it intersects with the artist, the more they deserve some sort of compensation around it. But like, for instance, if you're doing a live stream and you have some sort of alcohol sponsor come in, can you set up some signage behind the bar and like capture a shot of the bar before you like go to the shot of the stage where the artist is? So that way the artist isn't ever in the same shot, you know, with the logo, but like you're still getting them on air placement somewhere.
I think it does come down to where the content lives, because a lot of the larger artists especially may have conflicts with, you know, with the sponsor at the venue. And so their management and, you know, their agents are going to be far more sensitive to seeing their artist along with a competitor brand.
But you can still, I mean, you can still find ways to get around it. Like that's the thing. You can get creative. You can't have like the name of it in the series likely. But again, like maybe if you do that shot where the signage is just somewhere in the venue and the artist is never in the shot with the signage, it might be okay. Like you wouldn't be able to call out the sponsor and the artist in the same social post, but maybe you could do 2 separate posts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like just again, like that creativity like definitely comes into play, I think. And it also, you know, gives the brand, I think, more of an authentic placement rather than just like slapping a sticker on something, you know, like really talk about the brand in their post. Is it a new product? Like, what do you like about it? Versus just hashtagging them when you're talking about the artist.
That's a great point. You know, we talk about authenticity in brands, and it's sort of a funny buzzword that we all look at each other and say, did you just say authentic? But I apologize for having said authentic. Yeah, I mean, you're talking a little bit about a higher production value for the live stream. You're talking about putting people in the venue. Maybe there's an element of filming something before or separately from the live stream and showing that and packaging that. Are we feeling like going into winter that we are going to need to get some more of our video assets in order, maybe to shoot something separately to put in front of a live stream, and maybe we should be transparent with artists about how we're going to be doing that? Or how do we go about approaching sponsors and artists together as it becomes cold and we can't do anything outdoors? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think you alluded to it. I mean, it is that transparency, you know. I mean, I do think there are potentially things that you could do now, like you're saying, like capture some of that footage that you could edit in later, kind of lining things up, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I think anytime there's a sponsor involved, you know, you do have to be transparent with the artist. If the brand doesn't touch the artist, you know, you have a little more leeway with, you don't have to let them know how much the brand is paying. You don't have to let them know every single thing that you're doing with the brand. But like, if the artist has that comfort that the content lives separated, the social lives separated, sometimes that's enough.
Looks like we got another question.
Jen, you want to read it? Go for it.
Oh, sure. What pieces of data do brands want to see the most when deciding which partners to work with? We've been hosting audience list live streams at Ardmore Music Hall, hello, and have a ton of data about viewership over the past few months. Even with this data in hand, we've struggled to connect with many meaningful sponsors. I mean, I think data is king, you know, especially if it's, you know, you're able to show that there's conversion or any kind of, you know, click-throughs during the live streams to the sponsors' websites or e-commerce shops. I think in terms of what pieces of data. I think that the conversion piece is the big one. How does this convert to sales? How does this convert to follows? Or generate awareness? A lot of SEO. Are people searching for our brand based on this activation during this time period? Those are the types of things I know are key metrics that we look for. But I think in terms of, how you're presenting it, I would say putting it together with, a program, suggesting, get creative, because I know I get excited when people come with, ideas that are flexible, that can work within a structure, whatever objectives our brand clients have, where we can kind of reshape it or be able to figure out how we can make it work for us. I think, we get excited when there's a moment in time that makes sense. So, we're going to do something around, Freaky Friday, and every Freaky Friday is going to be, and we are looking for these types of sponsors that kind of align with these values, make it fun and interesting. And I think also thinking about the, what value you want out of it beyond just cash. I mean, cash is king, but also, are there products? Is there exposure? Is there media dollars that can be converted to promote your venue, or promote, maybe a fundraiser that you're doing, or an artist that you're supporting? I mean, those are the types of things I think that everybody's getting excited about, and gives everybody hope for the future. Is, there's a lot of different ways that we can look at these iconic venues being beacons of, music, the future of independent music.
I'm wondering too, like, if there would be a way to maybe partner sponsors together if you don't have the sort of streaming numbers that they're looking for. If there's another, like, if you compare two brand partners together that have, separate but kind of similar audiences themselves, like if you get one brand posting about another brand, like you're capturing that whole audience as well. I'd say at South by in the live space over the past, maybe 5 years, it's been more rare for sponsors to want to get in bed with each other. They kind of all want to own their own activation. They don't want any confusion around like why they're there, what it is that they're doing. So they've just wanted things to be a little more succinct. But I think, in this virtual space, it is all new. What happens in live in real life doesn't really always translate. So if you do need to capture more of an audience, maybe there is some partnership that you can tap into.
It's a great suggestion. I think it's interesting to think about how we can all come together in times like this. And I think we're going to be, talking about more of that as we head towards Thanksgiving and the giving season continues. We talked a little bit earlier about how, we're not really alone. We're going to be doing partnerships, not just with one another, but also potentially, or have been doing partnerships with nonprofit organizations. Are there any nonprofit tie-ins that you see make sense? Should we be looking locally? Should we be looking nationally, or towards causes that we've all been seeing in the media for the last long time?
I think it's a case-by-case basis for whatever works best for the independent venue. But yeah, there's a bunch of places locally that we work with, both from a music side and a food side, and all sorts of things. I mean, everybody needs help right now, whether you're an artist or a venue or just a regular person. So it's some weird times that we're living through. So if you can bring in a nonprofit, a lot of times there's additional funding that comes from that, or there's people that are willing to provide services for a far reduced rate if they know that there's a nonprofit involved. So that can be a helpful way to get live streams done more efficiently, cheaper, often, all those kind of things. But again, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of great nonprofits locally and nationally. So it's all what fits into your ethos and your plan.
It's incremental media as well. So if you think about, partnering with organizations that have large social followings, I was also thinking about that as, even separate, further to what Lizzie was saying in terms of other brand partnerships. I mean, partnerships with organizations, partnerships with media, channels, I think is another potential opportunity to, give brands the sense that you have a bigger reach than you may have by yourself, or even with the artists that you have performing.
Yeah, and reach is really what we're talking about for the brand perspective. How many people are going to be walking away feeling more passionate about the brand? And it's sometimes hard to prioritize that even as a brand today in the context of the conversations that we're seeing, whether it's politics or social justice or outside of those matters. We have just about a couple of minutes left, 1 or 2 minutes left. So I wanted to ask one last question to each of you. Any advice, if you had one piece of advice to give an independent venue as we are looking to find sponsorships in the coming winter months, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
I talk a lot. Lizzie, you go.
I would just say, as Jen, you were alluding to earlier, just kind of like having an idea of what it is that you want to do with that brand rather than just like getting cash, and paying the bills, as hard as that is. I think that, you do have to go deeper than that for sure, because everybody is just strapped right now. So yeah.
I would say every business, every industry in the world has been affected by what's happened. And I think that, in order to survive, there needs to be a certain level of creativity, but also a willingness to think differently about what your business represents, who your audience is and what they need. And, being able to support the community. People are so passionate about music. It really is truly the thing that, you can't put it in a bottle. You wish that you could bottle it. Brands love to work with music artists because they relate to people on such an emotional level. And I think that venues have a similar beloved quality for audiences. And so I think lean into that and figure out ways that you can capture people's imaginations. I think that would be the advice I would give.
Cool. I don't know if I have any better advice than that, but I'm happy to talk through with people personally if they want to pick brains further. Always open to get creative and brainstorm through this mess. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Rob, Lizzie, and Jen. I'm going to turn it back over to Moose for some final words.
Thank you to everyone for joining us for this session. A special thank you to Dan, our moderator, for leading the conversation, and to all the panelists for giving of their time and their knowledge. I learned a lot, which is my metric as to whether or not I feel a panel went well. Join us next in about 10 minutes for Community Servants, how your venue works with the neighborhood. And tomorrow we have 2 sessions, one at 1:30 about diversifying your audience, and one at 3 p.m. These are Eastern times, called Beyond the Stage, the Effect Venues Have on the Economy. Go to independentvenueweek.com for a look at tonight's programming, as well as links to all of the items in our fundraiser auction that is for the NEVA Emergency Relief Fund. Thank you again. And I am grateful again. Thank you, Dan. Thank you all. See you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.